Good morning. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your nonprofit origin story?
Yes. Hi, Tasha. Great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Robyn Greaves. I'm the co-founder of Pravi, which is a platform we're building to help nonprofits of any size find and convert new donors. I started my nonprofit journey as a volunteer. So I was a volunteer for 5 years, joined a committee that organizes an annual fundraising gala ball. Started off doing the event management, then ended up running the committee. And that volunteer work led to my first role at a nonprofit. So this was in Australia, and I worked in that nonprofit for 4 years. And that was really a life-changing experience for me. I really fell in love with the sector. And it was one of those organizations where you can get involved in everything, very kind of fluid. Everyone was involved a bit in fundraising, and everyone was involved a bit in operations, and you could just dip in and dip out into what like we were really passionate about. And
That.
then when I finished up at that nonprofit, through a few different kind of twists and turns, I ended up building this platform, ended up in the tech space.
It's such a winding journey, right? And I think so often when we hear the word nonprofit, technology and nonprofits almost seem like opposite words because so much of fundraising is really personal and is relationship built. But
Mhm.
in today's world, you that marrying of technology and really great fundraising practices is really key. So tell us a little bit like the Pravi, what is it? What are you building together with Jeremy?
Yeah, no. So we're building a platform that uses AI, machine learning. The problem we're trying to solve is that we spoke to a lot of small to mid-sized nonprofits, and they told us that they rely a lot on grants, trusts, corporates, but that money is always ring-fenced for a specific program or project. What they need is more unrestricted funding that will come from donors. But starting to acquire donors or growing when you're quite small is really difficult. It's expensive, it's time consuming, and it can be difficult to know where to start when you have a limited budget and limited time. What should you do to get the maximum ROI and try and get these new donors, new supporters? And obviously, it's not just about the money. Like by growing your donor base, you're also growing the people who are talking about your cause and your potential to
Absolutely.
attract volunteers and the people who are going to support your content on social media. And so there's all these great benefits of having these donors who love and support your cause. And so we're trying to build technology to help specifically small to mid-sized nonprofits either start acquiring donors or grow their donor base.
Very cool. I love that. And so you're in the UK and you're also remotely traveling and working at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So I am in the UK right now. For Pravi, we won at the start of this year, we won UK government funding to build the platform, which was, yeah, amazing. It was
Yeah.
before we won the funding, it was really an idea and a problem that we wanted to solve. But by getting this sort of year-long funding, it's really brought it into life and made it a real thing that we can bring out into the world. So that funding means that we stay in the UK for now, but we're still, myself and my co-founder Jeremy, we've been doing a nomadic journey for 2 years. So we've been traveling around, and before we got the funding, we were a little more adventurous, and we were in Southeast Asia, in the US, and in Europe as well.
I love that. It's fantastic. Yeah, watching along with your journey on LinkedIn is one of my favorites. So, favorite part of working in the nonprofit sector with Pravi now, but also in the experiences you had before?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, the diversity of a sector is endlessly fascinating, interesting. So just this, I've spoken to 3 charities in the UK already today. So a lot of part of my job right now is like talking to people who want to use the platform, find out what their problems are, what they need, what they think of what we're building. And so, yeah, this morning I've spoken to a charity that supports women who have to work on the streets, a charity that supports children who need specialist physiotherapy, and a charity that raises funds for hospitals for hospital equipment. And like, that's just amazing to me, that diversity, the work that happens, the people that are supported, the sort of the range of needs, and like how important all these charities are in supporting people and supporting the environment or supporting like the local community. This is why I love the Nonprofit Hive, because I could literally do this all day.
I love that. And I would totally agree. The diversity piece is one of my favorite parts of the hive. Like you said, the hive, like
Mm.
talking to someone whose focus is on saving African penguins all the way over to a sexual assault and crisis worker to
Mhm.
people who work with kids with disabilities. And that was just yesterday, right? So it's all over the map. I love it so much. Challenges of this work. What do you feel like are some of the biggest challenges?
I think for one of the main challenges is the problem that we're trying to solve with Pravi, is
Yeah.
how can you reach more donors? How can you reach more people when there's so many causes out there? And for large charities, there's a small percentage of large charities in the UK that do have really sophisticated marketing and big budgets, and they're able to use technology. And those are the charities that everyone thinks of, right? Those are the ones we know. And there's nothing wrong with they do amazing work, but there's so many smaller organizations competing with the same like attention and the same dollar. I
Yeah.
think, how do you break through? How do you capture people's attention? Because I think when I speak to people who are not in the nonprofit space, which I also try and do a lot, because I think it's important to hear both sides, most sort of regular people are unaware of how many nonprofits there are, all the range of work that is done, how hard it is to raise funds, where the funds even come from. Sometimes I had a hairdresser the other day, I was explaining what I do, and she was like, "What do you mean by donors?" She had no idea what that
Yeah.
meant. And so that's a real challenge. I think that bridging the gap between all the great work that's being done, how difficult it is to raise funds, and the sector as a whole, who really understands itself, but then the kind of average person on the street has heard of maybe a big brand charity, but just has no idea about the diversity and the depth of the sector.
For sure. I think one thing that you brought up there that for me, like nonprofits are not marketing what nonprofit is very well.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like we don't,
yeah.
there's a couple groups out there that are starting to, excuse me, work on it
Mm,
and are starting to recognize that is a thing.
mm,
There's
mm,
not very many, right? I don't know
mm,
what it's like in the UK, but the US and Canada, there is Damplauda has a marketing firm that does that charity focused charity defense
mm,
council, I think it's called. And then trust-based philanthropy out of the US is
mm,
starting to take that on, but there's not very many groups out there.
mm,
And I don't know of any really in other countries that I see it, considering how deep I am in and the algorithm should pick that stuff up. It should
mm,
be in
mm,
front of me.
mm.
I'm not seeing it. I'm not
Yeah.
seeing it out there, right? So maybe that's something. I love that there's tools and solutions that are helping those smaller nonprofits, which are the majority, right? Like the
Yeah,
majority of
definitely.
nonprofits are small and they're the ones that
Mm,
really need the tools because the sophistication of those really big tools on the market that work well for profit
mm.
are never going to work for a small charity, right? Like it's too much and it's not who's even going to sustain that on a team of 6. It's just
Exactly.
not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's the problem we want to solve with Pravi, is that how can you build a platform for organizations that don't have much, if any, internal donor data already?
yeah,
A lot of the platforms out there can optimize what you already have. So if you have 100,000 donor records in your donor management system or your CRM, there are tools that can optimize that for you and
yeah,
tell you, target these people for this campaign, or these people are able to give more. But if you don't have that data internally, you can't
yeah,
use those tools. There's nothing to optimize in that space. And then also, as you say, the budget for these tools, and then the sort of internal capacity
yeah.
or capability in terms of IT or data science and things like that. So I
I love
think
that.
that there's lots of great tools on the market. I think a lot of them are not suitable for the vast majority of nonprofits.
Totally agree. Totally agree. At one point, I was working with a Salesforce for nonprofits
Mm,
partner. And while it was great and it could do a lot of, I mean, incredible amount of things, it
mm,
was also the majority of those nonprofit teams didn't have somebody who was able to maintain it, right?
mm,
So you're not, it can be free. And that's one of the things I do have a bit of beef with these larger techs that are being directed like they're for nonprofits or they have a nonprofit division, that it's false because yeah, it's free, but it's not
Mm,
free at all because
mm,
the cost of manpower, of training, of an
yeah.
already overwhelmed team,
Mhm,
the products fail because
mhm,
it's too big, right? And
mm.
they can't actually onboard it even if they want to onboard.
Yeah, and as you say, then the time and the capacity to maintain it.
Yeah.
Someone actually, one of the charities I spoke to this morning, literally said we were talking about this problem with CRMs, and he said, "I'm not a data analyst. I'm a fundraiser.
Yeah.
I should be. I want to be fundraising. I don't want to be doing." And it's like, so that's a real challenge, especially as you say, in a tiny team. Like he's one person in a team of two, so yeah,
Yeah, that's
every
enormous.
minute counts. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then for those of us like extroverts, like myself, you if you're an extrovert fundraiser and really all you want to do is the peopling, right? And on bigger
Mm,
teams, there are different versions of fundraisers that then become prospect researchers and data analysts and all of those pieces within fundraising. But for those of us who all we want to do is talk to people, nothing is more irksome than the idea that you have to figure out your tech and then the data and all of that different pieces. If it doesn't move smoothly, that's just like a recipe for a day that I don't want to be doing for myself at least.
And for the organization, you want your people to be out there. Talk
Yeah,
if you have someone on your team, you're lucky enough to have someone who is desperate to get out there and raise funds or spread the word. Like you want to deploy those people to do that because there's a lot of people that are not comfortable doing that. And so if you're lucky enough to have one, you want them out there working the magic.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so peer support in your work in nonprofit, and then I mean, now that I think you're a techie at this point if you started a tech startup, and actually in startup land as well. So you're like hitting a lot of different spots. How does peer support factor into your ongoing success?
It's really important. I think outside perspectives are really important in terms of the product we're building, but also just in terms of kind of life experience. Because I work from home, I work almost entirely with my co-founder Jeremy. I speak to people on Zoom all day, but like you can be too insular, your own experiences, your own thoughts, your own feedback on what you're building, and what you need is an outside perspective, and not just in terms of the business, but just in terms of life in general. And so I think early on in my kind of entrepreneurial journey, I was very slow and shy to share what I wanted to build, the business that I saw as being possible. I didn't feel I had imposter syndrome. I didn't feel like I sort of
Yeah.
belonged in spaces with other founders or with, I still don't really feel like I belong with tech people, but I'm getting better at that. But what I've learned in like the last 2 years of running my own businesses is that like, you have to talk about what you want to build, talk about what you want to do, and see what do people think about that, and
Yeah.
what advice can they give you, or who can they introduce you to, or what do they know, or who do they know? And if you don't talk to people, you'll never get that. And
Yeah.
it's people are like across the board. I found this is within nonprofit, within small businesses, and within building startup, is people are so generous, like they want to help. So people are constantly being like, who can I introduce? I can introduce you to this person, or you should look at this resource, or I'll send you this article, or you should go to this event. And that has always amazed me, how generous people are and how much people want to help and support like other people. And so that's just, if you're not talking to people, that's what you're missing out on, basically.
Absolutely. I think it's almost the amount of vulnerability that I've put out to the world about this wild journey. And as I'm learning, like the thing I felt confident in was the community building part. I was like, oh, I
Mm,
love this. This is the stuff that I already knew how to do. I knew engagement, I knew marketing. I don't know anything about being an entrepreneur, a
mm,
successful one in particular. I have no idea what I'm doing. I am not a techie at all. And so there was all of these pieces, and particularly when someone will be like, "Oh, yeah," especially when I'm given the female entrepreneur and someone will introduce me as like a startup founder, and I'm almost like, "Who are they talking about?" I still have that moment where I'm like, "Is that me?" Because that was not my intention, but it has been surrounding myself with other people that I've started to go, "Okay, well, I have been doing this for like over a year.
Mm,
I guess this is me, right? And but it's only been through conversation that the imposter syndrome has actually gone
mm,
down a lot.
mm,
To
mm,
kind of
mm.
go, yeah, this I have had some really done some really foolish things along this route, but I've also been prevented from my failures are smaller because I've talked to other people in advance, right?
Mm,
And
mm, mm.
workshopped it and been really transparent about my lack of knowledge sometimes is actually been great because then other people go, "I know that, and
Yeah,
I can help with that." And you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing. I don't have to do it all." So
yeah.
I think you've done a really great job on that on LinkedIn. I love the post you put up about that female entrepreneur startup journey because I think we need to share more about it.
Definitely, and I think like what you realize again, like when you start talking about your own journey, or you start connecting with people about theirs, is everyone's made those mistakes. Like everyone, no one is born knowing how to do this, or
Yeah,
especially if you've had a career where you weren't working for yourself, or you're like employed in another organization, and then you're suddenly by yourself. No one knows instinctively how to do that. It's a journey, and one of the funny things I think about humans is that we basically have to learn all lessons ourselves in relationships, in life, about everything. It's until you've actually gone through it and experienced it, then the lesson comes and sticks. But it's otherwise, people can tell you, but it's not until you experience it yourself.
absolutely, absolutely. And so you've been a Hive member for a while now. You and Jeremy came blasting in really fast. You had this idea, and Pravi was still in the earlier stages, and you guys were amazing and just came up and we're like, not only is this a cool idea that, but we also want to support. So you guys have already been sponsors at the gate. Like it was amazing. I love being able to put you guys in chats because I know you're bringing a lot of different perspectives to the work that a lot of our members won't have had an opportunity to talk about. So what have you gotten out of being a Hive member?
But like first and foremost, again, it's that this the amazing like diversity, like geographically. So I've spoken to people from the US, from Canada, from countries in Europe, from countries in Africa, and you hear the similarities and the differences, which I find endlessly fascinating, but is also really important for my work because I really believe in global communities, global solutions, global platforms. So has been amazing, just being able to so easily connect with someone who's on the other side of the world. And then also the diversity again of people's roles. So different consultants, different people working in a nonprofit, other people building tech solutions, people who are just starting out in a nonprofit career, or people who are 40 years deep in a career with all these different kind of experiences, and really people who outside of the nonprofit hive I wouldn't cross paths with. And so I think that's really special because that's that opportunity to connect with someone who you inherently have things in common because you're in the space, you care about the sector, and then you can learn about each other, learn about each other's experiences, and sort of broadens your mindset to what everyone is doing.
I love that. I love that. It's all the same things that I enjoy so much. And a lot of people will go, I'm starting to get more and more where people will go, "What trends are you seeing this way? What are you hearing? What are you hearing?" And I'm only able to do that because of this diverse network of individuals. And the testimonials are amazing. I think we've got 600 testimonials or something. And it's crazy in the last year. It's wild. But I read those and go, what are people like? What are people enjoying about the chats? What do they say they've
Mm,
learned? What are they saying they're getting out of it? And similar to yourself, I try to connect with at least 3 to 5 members of our community a week, and then
mm,
maybe an additional 2 or 3 that are outside the community,
mm.
because it's that I just try to listen as much as I can and go,
Yeah.
"What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I'm like an obsessive, like, note taker sometimes, but it's the amalgamation of all of that
Mm,
that really is helping me go, "This is what's needed next," or "This is the
mm.
resource people are looking for," instead of just taking my own assumptions. And so I think I love that you guys are doing that with Pravi and listening to the voice of the people, because too often we can get stuck in what we think is what is needed, and often we're not quite on the mark.
And that's what we need, and that's very so important for tech as well, tech
Yeah.
building, and especially in AI, like diverse voices, diverse perspectives, diverse use cases are like fundamental for building good technology, fundamental for making AI more equitable, less biased, more available. All these things like require a diverse like voice contributing to them, and the only way we can do that is to have these like global communities, global platforms, global solutions, because these are global problems that we're trying to solve.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally on the global problems. Well, this is lovely. I mean, we haven't caught up in a little while, so I'm super excited to hear where Pravi is going. How can people get in touch with you and how can people learn more about Pravi?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm basically on LinkedIn all the time. So to connect with me, but also to actually reach out and send a message. As I mentioned, I am actively connecting with, talking to, having meetings like this with people working in the sector because it directly influences what we're building with Pravi. For more about the platform, we have a website which is just Pravi.AI. We're currently signing up charities in the UK for user testing, but that will go broader as soon as possible. So we've had a lot of interest from organizations in the US and in Canada. And so we're looking at like how we can expand that beyond the UK as soon as possible. But yeah, I would love to connect with more non-profiteers, of course.
Great. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me, Robyn, and thanks for all of your support of what we're building at the Nonprofit Hive.
No, thank you so much, Tasha. This was so fun.